I want to welcome you to our show today. And I know that as we promised you, it's going to be life-changing. On today's screens today, we have our special guest, Ruben Mohindi. And I know he's going to tell us more about his work of faith with God. And I know that you will be blessed. Karibu sana, Ruben.
Thank you.
Thank you for making time.
Thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on Keeping the Faith show. Really an amazing show that I see on PrayerCave TV. And it's a humble honor to be your guest for today. So again, to yourself and the crew, thanks for having me.
Karibu sana. We are also very pleased to have you making time for us within your busy schedules.
Asante sana.
And I know that as we are able to tell our viewers what God has done in your life, I know that many will be blessed and they'll be touched. Let's start from the beginning. Let's start by you telling us about yourself. Let us know who Ruben is and who he is today, who he has become.
Thank you. So my name is Ruben Muhindi Wawamboi.
Yes.
And it's a pleasure to be here. And I come from a family of many kids.
Yes.
And I grew up most of my time growing up. I grew up in two places. I grew up in Umoja, and then later on I grew up in Kiambu.
Okay.
That has been my growing up. Professionally, I'm an economist. I work with the UN, with the Environmental Agency, UNEP.
Wow.
Where I work on issues to do with climate risk and green finance. But above all that, I am a believer and Jesus Christ is Lord.
Amen. Thank you very much. An economist.
Yes.
We know that God has really done a lot of great work in your life. And so today I want us to look back into your life journey, and see how you have kept the faith.
Yeah.
It has been a moment of struggles. I know it has been a journey that has been filled with challenges. I know there are so many things that one goes through. And yours is life of an academician, having reached some great heights that we would say many people are looking forward to get to.
Yeah.
And I know that we are able to make someone out there encouraged by what you have seen. And on this show, definitely, we are looking for what we would call someone that will make people to see the reason for keeping the faith.
Yeah.
Faith in God who is able to do these things.
Yeah.
So let's start from there. Let's start from your early days. And especially within, you've told us that you grew up in different places.
Yeah.
So just started for us right from the beginning, how it all started, your upbringing, your school life, and all that.
Oh, wonderful. So going all the way back, when you talk about keeping the faith, there must be an origin. So I grew up in a typical Christian home. My mother is a pastor. And so, as you'd expect, there was a lot of Christian teaching.
Yes.
And, normal things as a child, going to church and, praying at home, praying for meals, the things that, children will do. And my journey back, I've seen a lot of God's grace throughout my journey, especially in my, I'll talk a bit about my education.
Yeah.
The school I first went to was called Green Pastures. It's in Umoja. I don't know if the school is still there, but that is where I got the fundamentals of a lot of going to school where there's like parade and you're saying memory verses. John 11:35, Jesus wept.
Yes.
John 3:16, which we are all familiar with. And then I went to a school called King's School. So King's School is a school that is operated by Deliverance Church Umoja, under Pastor Reverend J.B. Masinde. And I was actually telling a friend recently. So one of the things I do really well, I memorize Bible verses a lot. And it's because of what we were taught at King's School. It was mandatory.
You had to learn Bible verses
to memorize
and memorize them.
Yeah, and actually at this point I want to say, parents is a very good thing to teach your children to memorize. So I'm very good at memorizing things. Yeah, and memorizing very long, things.
Memory verses.
Yes, but it was because of school actually, being taught at school, and you'd memorize and then you'd have to say them like during parade on Friday.
Yeah.
So I went to class 8, finished class 8, I did my KCPE exam, passed really well.
Okay.
Yeah, and this time, I wouldn't say I was not even born again. There's that when you grow in a Christian family, you're not even sure whether you're born again because,
Yes.
you've grown up in that setting. Passed very well. I remember scoring 417 marks out of
Wow.
500.
That's a pass.
Yes. And then I got a letter, my admission letter to go to Nyeri High School.
Yes.
Very good school, provincial school at the time. And so I was to go to Nyeri High School. But there was one challenge.
Yes.
I remember during that time, we were going through a lot of financial difficulties at home.
Yes.
And I could sense my mom wasn't ready for me to go to high school. So what she ended up doing, which when I look back was actually a step of faith, she had a small piece of land, which is the only piece of land she owned. And the reason it was the only one, it was the piece of land she had gotten from the father, my late grandpa.
As an inheritance.
Yes. So my grandpa had given inheritance to the boys and some little parcel of land to the two girls.
Yes. Your mom,
two daughters. My mom and my late aunt. And she sold it as an act of faith to take me to high school. And so when I went to high school, it was all exciting. Went to Nyeri High School, started adjusting. And like normal, you go to a school and you meet people from all walks of life.
Yes.
You study with like very rich people. I remember one of my classmates, the dad was a PC. You remember then we had the provincial administration.
Yes.
So I remember he was the son to one of the PCs of one of the provinces. And there was a lot of self-esteem issues, because you're not sure
whether you fit in
whether you
that
fit
kind
in.
of
and that thing really disturbed me through my high school life, I will tell you for a fact. And one of my most interesting story, I like reminding this to my mom and my family. I remember there's a time I think I was in Form 3. I called my mom. We had a school booth, the booth where you put money and you take the numbers.
Coins.
Exactly. We had a booth in the high school. And one time I wasn't sure if my mom was actually going to come. I think we had an academic clinic or a visiting day. I don't remember what was there. So I called her and I asked her if she was coming. And she told me she's not sure because she doesn't have fare to come and also bring me something. And we are not talking of very far. We are talking from Kiambu to Nyeri. So if you go from Kiambu, go Nairobi, take a matatu from Nairobi to Nyeri, and back, and then Kiambu. So we are talking of less than 1,000 shillings, probably even 500 or 600 total. So because I had pocket money, which she had given me when the term started, I actually told her, we kuja shule,
we'll figure out how you'll
I'll
get
give
back.
you fare to go back. And that is what happened.
Wow.
She came and I gave her fare back home. So people are asking, umeletewa nini? What have you been taught? It's visiting day. And for me, I was like, even the fare for my mom going back, I am the one who provided for her. So I remember that. But one thing that helped me then, and I say it's God's grace, I remained focused. I mean, for the much I have known myself, since I was in school, I've always been a focused, then a boy. I used to be a very focused boy even in high school.
Yes.
And I wasn't indisciplined. At least I tried to be disciplined. And I remember in Form 1 and Form 2, I wasn't performing as well. But by the time I got to Form 3, I started performing well. And I always tell parents, because I have dealt with parents a lot, especially parents of high school students, because I've done a lot of high school ministry in church. I always say some children are late bloomers, which means they don't bloom very early.
Yeah.
So if you take your child to school, you may not see that they're performing well. But some kids only perform very well later.
Yeah.
So in Form 1 and Form 2, I remember, I wasn't known as a chopi in Form 1 and Form 2. Well, I was a chopi in primary. When I went to high school, I found competition. And Form 1 and Form 2, I wasn't doing as well. But in expect mathematics, I was always the best math student throughout high school.
Mathematician.
Yes.
You mentioned about being called into the high school now.
Yeah.
A provincial high school, Nyeri High School to be precise.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of financial struggle.
Yeah.
And then how did you manage through with the school fees throughout that session?
Yeah, I remember one thing that helped a lot. I think I have only become conscious of all that later on in life. So I actually realized after high school that my parent, my mom, shielded me a lot from that. So I only figured later that all these things were happening, but she wasn't letting me know everything that was
Mm-hmm.
happening. And I don't think the idea is to hide this from the kids, but I think it's being able to assess how much of the situation at home can my child handle
Yes.
and deciding what to expose them to and what to hold back.
Yeah.
At least for the sale of land, she let me know
Yeah.
because all of a sudden she did not have money for buying. You know that long list of high school, you go with a box, dictionary, kamusi,
Beddings.
beddings, panga, hockey stick, because those things are mandatory. And all of a sudden they're available. And so she told me where she had gotten the money from.
Yes.
And I think one thing that helped is how she managed the whole thing. Even when there was lack, she shielded us from the stress of that. But also, like she taught us, every time she would say, "Ni Mungu ameprovide."
Yes.
So she was able to teach us this act of faith,
Trusting in
yeah,
God.
trusting in God and faith.
Yes.
But you can't hide as much because I remember later on now finishing my high school journey when I was around Form 3 and Form 4, something interesting happened. My mom was auctioned by one of the local banks, which
Yes.
of course I will not mention. And it actually happened at a time when, one day the bank came to our house and they carried everything. And I don't know
Everything.
if you know what auctioneers do. When they come, they only leave your beddings
Yes.
and
Everything else
and
they will
and
take.
and, and kitchen items so that you're able at least to cook or something. So they carried everything. And I remember when they did that, uh, the house was so hollow. So when we speak, you'd hear echo
Yes.
because all these seats and beds and all this, they make sure they absorb the
The
sound. But
sounds.
there was nothing. There was nothing like this chair. So in the house, it was all empty. And I remember we used to stay up in the Ndegwa in Kiambu, and we used to stay on the second floor of
Mm-hmm.
some apartments.
Mm-hmm.
So people would ask, "Mnahama?"
Yeah.
And I would be like,
There is
"No,
nothing in the house. Eh?
no, because they've seen a lorry and things being loaded on
Ah,
the lorry.
yes.
So they know you guys are moving houses. No, then you have to tell them hatuhami. Then they ask, amhami na vitu zenyu zinachukuliwa. They would ask that.
Yes.
So if the things are being taken, then what is happening? And then I remember my mom, and that really helped. My mom told me, do not hide anything.
There is this time you're in school,
Yeah.
high school to be
Yeah.
precise, and there was a time when we were talking about earlier on the struggles you had to go through. One
Yeah.
of them was the school fees and all that.
Yeah.
And mom helping you to trust in God,
Yeah.
and training you in the work of faith.
Yeah.
And now there is all those things that happened, like you've mentioned.
Yeah.
There was this time when you were also struggling with the eye problem.
Yeah. So what happened when I was in high school, around Form 2, my eyes started, they started paining. And this was in Form 2. And continued in Form 3. Actually, I have an interesting time. There's a time when I was in Form 4, during all the night preps, I would sleep. Because the light, I was so sensitive to light. So every time I would want to study, my eyes would cry a lot. And because of that teary situation of my eyes, I would prefer to sleep, because then when I sleep,
It will
my
not.
my eyes, they don't do anything because I'm asleep.
Yes.
And that costed me a lot of time. I won't say lost, but a lot of my time in Form 3 and Form 4 I used to sleep during prep, especially in the evenings because of the light. But had a fear that would really affect my school performance. And by then we didn't know what the problem is. And I remember when I finished high school, the next year I got spectacles because I figured I was short-sighted, and I was also very sensitive to light.
Yeah.
And but thankfully to God that even with that eye struggle, I was still able to finish high school. Yeah, because I remember even during KCSE, there are times I would look like, which is the next subject we are doing. Like I remember before, like chemistry, biology paper 2, I was like, my eyes were paining a lot. You know what I said? Exam ni kesho. So I just slept for the prep and waited for biology exam the next day. Part of it because I was also feeling a bit prepared because I
Yeah.
had done very well in biology. I always joke when I did my KCSE, when I went to sit for biology paper one, I said I'll start with the easy questions and finish. And once I'm done with the easy
Easy
ones,
ones. You
I'll
go to
come
the
to
hard
the
ones.
hard ones. But when I started from number one doing the easy ones, I finished the paper. So I got to the last question, and all of them had been
Has
easy. And
been
I was,
done.
so that when biology paper two came, I told myself, you know what, probably I've done well in biology paper one. So maybe I can just sleep well so that I'm ready for the exam. Because when your eyes pain, it means it comes with headaches.
Yeah. So you are not even able at that point
Yes.
to
But
talk
things
about it.
turned out well because I am not oblivious to the fact that we have a lot of people who, because of like health problems, their education has been disrupted.
Yes.
Yes.
And so much so.
Yeah, and so seeing that God, even in that situation, my education was not disrupted, for me, that is a big miracle.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. It is something that you will say there's a lot of it that God is. There's a very big hand of God in that.
Yeah.
Great, great. So, our viewers, we have our special guest. Caesar, like I told you, he's an academician. He's an economist. And he's told us about the struggles he has had to go through um, during his school life. It has not been easy trying to really figure out how to even negotiate with the school management to be kept at school so that he can eventually clear. And he has. There's this time he has now come through to even struggle with his eyes and vision. And we will take a short break. As we come back, we will be able now to figure out, you will be able to see how he was able to deal with that eye problem and if it has had any effects. And particularly more so, to see how his journey in the life of academy has come through. Don't turn your channels. Welcome back to the Keeping the Faith show. Just before the break, we had our special guests telling us about the experience, the struggles, and the transition now into the campus life. So you have told us you wanted to do private university with a high focus on economics, I mean. But then you have been called by Joint Admissions Board into a different university. So how does it go from here on? Struggles. You have maneuvered through, you have not been sent home despite the challenges in school fees, and you have performed.
Yeah.
So there is that also maneuver, I mean, that part that God has helped you to manage through with the eye problem and still perform. There was
Yeah.
no distraction per se.
Yeah.
So you have now come through to a point of joining campus life. So you have told us you wanted to do private university with a high focus on economics, I mean. But then you have been called by Joint Admissions Board into a different university. So how does it go from here on? And I'm still thinking that you haven't come out of these struggles, financials. So private university means that the amount of money required here is huge. But what kind of faith is this that you want to do a private university? You have been called into a public one, but your faith tells you to do this. So tell us how this goes and the hand of God in this whole.
Yeah, and also just to take a step back, I remember when I was in high school. Of course, I was just home a couple of times, but my education wasn't disrupted in the sense that I always went back. And I actually remember one of the times I told you just before KCSE, we were sent home. Those
Yes,
with high
you
school
mentioned.
fees, so that we can reduce the school fees balance a bit. I remember that time I was sent home. I actually got an accident at Makoyo, coming home from Nyeri.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a bad accident because some people there were casualties, people were taken to hospital in ambulances and all that. And but I survived. So we lost control, the car, the matatu I was in,
Yeah.
and it rolled off the road. And when so I got home very late because after the accident, you all leave the car,
Yeah.
and then we checked ourselves. Those who had been injured were taken to hospitals, and the rest who felt they were fine, including me, decided to go home. So what I didn't, when I went home, I got home very late.
Okay.
And I remember my mom asked, "Why have you gotten home
So
very
late.
late?" Once she had called from the booth at school saying we are going to be just home. So she was expecting me.
Yeah.
And that's why we are late. I just told her I left school very late. But I remember when I removed my sweater, which I had worn when it got like dark, she asked me, "What is that on your back? Uko na damu mingi sana kwa mgongo." So what had happened when we got the accident, the lady who was seated behind me, she hit her head on the seat in front. And she lost a lot of her teeth, and her blood, I didn't know, a lot of it had poured on my shirt. Wow. But I was hoping not to talk about this accident, not to scare my family.
Yes.
But now when my shirt was seen, I had to give the whole story, what had happened. But anyway, I survived that, thanks to God. So come to going to campus, I think it was just faith. And that feeling of, this is something I want, and I'm going to go for it. And one thing I like, and I would like to urge our listeners, is, when you keep faith, you keep confessing that. Because I remember there is a time we would meet like our relatives, and I would say, and people would ask, like, my mom, like, what is the next step for your son? Amemaliza shule, ulimpeleka Bible school, kwani unataka akue pastor? And I was like, no, my going to Bible college, at Word of Faith Bible College, was not because I wanted to be a pastor, but I had decided that is what I want to do after school. And also, to be honest, a lot of people after school, they went to do immediately computer classes and driving school, which I could not, and even CPA, because I remember, like, I had gotten a partial scholarship to Strathmore to do CPA.
Yeah.
But the reason I turned it down, because the portion I was supposed to pay, I could not afford.
You couldn't afford.
So I gave it up. So I went to Bible College, finished, and then later they were like, "Sasa, ulimaliza kwenda Bible College, what next?" And she would say, "I'm going to do economics and finance." And I would be like, "No, I'm going to do this course at Strathmore, which is around the same financial economics." And that proclaiming, keeping that faith,
and saying it,
because at some point I told her, wacha kuambia watu ninaenda public university kwenye nili, and it's not bad for me, it was out of preference. Of course, a lot of respect for our public universities as well, but I kept confessing. And I remember one day I went to our pastor, Bishop Thomas, and I told him, I've been offered a partial scholarship to go to Strathmore, 35%, and I need to pay 65%, but I could not afford the 65%. And he told me, if you have 35%, go in. God will provide the rest when you're in. But it didn't make sense to me. So I went, did first year, but did first semester. So there are 2 semesters. So after the first semester, I did a harambe, a fundraiser, to raise school fees for the second semester. And I remember one of our family friends asking my mom, actually this was a question, kwani unajiekelea kupeleka mtoto shule huwezi afford? And she even said, no, my son believed that is what he wants to do, and we are doing this by faith. And we agreed as a family it is by faith. But now the question was, after second semester, so I'm done with first year, first semester, first year, second semester. But you cannot do a fundraiser every semester. So, but I remember trusting God and saying, I'm going to do this. And I remember during the break between my first year and second semester, I was actually teaching at a local school here in Kiambu, called Kiambu Township Secondary School. And I really enjoyed teaching there, because our university had a rule. Once you finish first semester, you have to go and do something that helps the community for at least 12 weeks. So I had wanted to either go serve in a hospital. I tried, I couldn't get a hospital where they accepted me. Then I went to this high school, and teaching at Kiambu Township Secondary School was such a blessing to me. And it is during my time there, one day I got confirmation that my scholarship application had gone through. And I had found one of the sponsorship trusts within the university had allowed to sponsor me for the rest of. So now I got 100% scholarship.
Wonderful.
And this was at the point where I was convinced if we open school, I honestly have nothing. Like,
Nothing
I
to
will
do.
drop out. But remember, I had not deferred my admission to private public uni. And because I had not deferred, it means I could not go back because I had
Yes.
already closed off that door.
Yes.
But we trust God. And this is not like foolish trust. It's trusting and doing something about it. I was trusting and applying for scholarships.
Left,
I
right, and
applied for
center.
many scholarships. I remember writing to CEOs of banks, telling them I want them to sponsor me. Trying so many things without knowing which door will open.
Yes.
But in that trying and trying by faith, that worked. Went through campus. My campus experience was really good, and when I was in campus, God opened so many doors for me.
Yeah.
One, academically, because when I was in campus, I was the best student in financial economics for all my 4 years
Wow.
of being in campus, and trusting, and also the point of faith, because something I forgot to mention, when I was in high school, I got born again. Yeah, I got born again. I was and served as a youth secretary. Of course, challenges also being born again, and when you're a young person, people are like, hey, sikule maisha kwanza, unaokoka kwa nini? And also being in church helped me, because when I was in campus, I used to serve in church in the high school ministry.
Yeah.
And one thing I learned during that time, when you keep the fellowship of other believers, it really helps to strengthen your faith.
True.
Because sometimes you go through like campus and you're feeling like you're falling off the faith, unaenda mrama, then when you come back to church on Sunday,
You
and
remember.
you people who are born again and Christians, you come back on track. So that happened. And when I was in campus, God started opening for me even like doors abroad, because I remember my first time taking a flight, I was in campus, I was in third year. There was a conference in Spain for economics, and our professor said he would go with 5 of his best students in economics, and had been the best one. So God provided even the tickets to go. And since then, one thing that I have seen is, even if you choose to pursue something that has nothing to do with the church, you don't become a pastor or an apostle.
Yeah.
And even you just choose a mainstream career, maybe you're in marketing, you're in business, you're in everything, God cares about all that.
True.
We don't all have to be like pastors in on the pulpit.
Yes.
And even after that, I finished campus, and then God gave me a good job after that. And I was working for the number one management consultancy firm in the world. And even when I was there, I had also the struggle of, you work in a very secular setup.
It's a very secular setup, and
yet you're a born again. How do you do that? And I realized, if you have actually that desire to live by your faith, and one thing that helps to live by your faith is to speak it. True. Because when you speak it, even the people who are not Christians, they are the ones who hold you to that standard.
Yes.
Because you do something and they say,
but you said
you're you're born again. So speaking about it helps a lot, but also the company you keep outside of work, because your faith becomes refreshed. And that was my educational journey until working. And then at some point after I worked, I decided to do my master's. Again, I trusted God, and I really wanted to study abroad. And I'll tell you where this desire was coming from. So in our family, we have a history.
Okay.
Before I went to campus, no one in my family had gone past Form 3. So I had how you have examples in your family, your uncle, your aunt. No. My mom dropped out of high school. My uncles dropped out of high school. My older cousins, they had dropped out of high school. So I did not have anyone in my family as an example who had ever gone past Form 3. And so I had no example in our family of someone who had gone, at least from my immediate family, who had gone to campus. So there was that faith and believing God. Since no one even in our family had studied abroad, I wanted to be the first. And by the grace of God, I went, studied abroad. I did my master's in Switzerland. I was in the city of Geneva, and I spent 2.5 years living there.
So getting to completing campus life, of course, like you've mentioned, it's pure trust in God, faith in action.
Yeah,
definitely. And I love that part that you mentioned, that you had to actively engage with
Yeah.
activities that will work towards that faith and God coming in.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned that now you got a scholarship to do your master's.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your experience in studying, living, working abroad as you undertake your master's, and how you transition back to Kenya.
Yeah, one thing I'll mention is, when you believe for something, you also put in effort. Because even if I got this scholarship, I had also applied to 3 other schools before, earlier when I had finished campus to go do my master's, and I was rejected by all the 3 schools.
Yeah.
And I remember it stings so badly. But one thing I like saying, in this life, I have applied for so many things that if I start compiling all the reject letters I have ever received, there are too many. But
Wow.
at some point when you keep trying things and you're told, we regret to, those emails are very well worded. We
Yes.
regret to inform you that at some point they don't move you because you have
You are
received.
now used to it.
So I always urge people, it's always good to keep trying. My experience living abroad was good, and living in Geneva, and also I've had an opportunity to travel wide. At least I've been to at least more than 15 countries, and my experience is always that what has really helped me looking back with that experience, you have to always remember who you are. Because what happens when you move, and not even just a new country, every time you go to a new place, when you're not conscious of who you are, you start becoming like the place.
Yes. You're transformed.
Yeah, you're transformed. So one thing that really helped me is always remembering
Who you are.
And I remember there was a time I stayed before I got a church. I was church hopping, trying to find the church that I could fit in, because some churches I went, they were doing like English, French English translation, because Geneva is a French city, and I wasn't getting too comfortable with French sermon and listening to translation.
Yeah.
Some I went, I didn't fit in and all that, but finally I found a home church. So just being who you are really helps a lot. Who you are, where your roots are. Like mimi tu nimelelewa, mimi ni mtoto wa Kiambu.
Yes.
That is who I am, and getting used to that, and also keeping connection with your people back home. It really helps a lot, even with mental health.
It does.
Being connected to people back. But also, and lastly, in terms of how I managed the whole thing and coming back, is every time you are conscious that all these opportunities have been given to you. The Bible says in the book of Acts, a man can have nothing unless it is given to
By
him
God.
from heaven. So being conscious that all these opportunities you have had in life, it is the gift of God.
Yes.
You don't feel overwhelmed by the opportunities, because it is God who has done it for you.
And you will also have to protect it as well.
Yes, protect it, and also help others. If someone needs advice, I do a lot of advising people, when they're applying for schools abroad. Sometimes just telling them, talk to this person, I think they could guide you and all that. And even trusting God to come back, that has been and coming back. And also during, I got a job during COVID, because I started working for the UN when I was in Geneva when there was COVID. When a time when people are saying you cannot get a job, kuna COVID,
every company is closing.
I got a job during COVID because the Bible says we do not walk by sight, but we walk by faith. And so my urge is always, there's there's everything happening in the world, but I think as believers it's good to always remind yourself you're not of the world. Yes, and that, for me, that is my journey of keeping the faith. Remembering that you're a child of God. It is very important to remind yourself that unajua hata na hizi mashida zote, even with siasa happening and everything, just reminding ourselves that we are the children of God and that God cares about our welfare.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talking of that opportunities that God grants you, and being gifts, while you're still in Geneva, the highest level of your coronation is the award that you are able to get.
Yeah.
In brief, tell us about it. How was it at that time? Did it feel like this is a miracle happening? right before your eyes.
Of course, when you get awards, it is God. So when I was doing my master's, I got two awards. One, I was awarded the best master's thesis in economics. It's called the Rudy Don Bush Prize,
Yes.
which is a very good prize because of the honor that comes with it. It also comes with a very handsome cash prize, which I will not mention on camera. And but as I always say, even this ability to excel, the Bible says that it is God who works in us to do, to will, and to act according to his good purpose. So I am always conscious that is a gift of God. And also while I was in campus, in masters, doing my masters, I won this prize called the St. Gallen Symposium, which is the most prestigious essay competition for postgraduate students in the world. Wow. And I was seeing the people who had won before me, they're all coming from big schools. And I remember one day they highlighted the top 9 students who had qualified for the semi-finals.
Yes.
For the final. And I was seeing people from very big schools, those I remember 2 guys from Harvard, someone from Yale, someone from Pennsylvania, myself from the Graduate Institute, which is a very good school. We had someone from like Moscow University, and just looking at this and just feeling overwhelmed. Can I actually win this? But I like believing in the servants of God. And yes, our pastor, Bishop Thomas More, they always tells us that the grace that is upon our lives is beyond competition. So I trusted the word, and even when I won that global prize, and it's a very prestigious prize. When you win that prize, you get more than 1 million shillings in cash.
Wow.
And I was even telling my brother then that, I trusted. But one thing I have come to believe, it is grace. And the more you are conscious of the grace of God in your life, the more it multiplies. Because one thing I have learned as part of keeping the faith, the more you're conscious of grace, it suppresses self. Because all these things like being anxious, fearing competition, all those come from a point of self.
Yes.
But when you're conscious of grace, what it happens, it suppresses self and then allows for grace to do its work.
Yes.
So that is my journey of keeping the faith. And even right now, I'm still trusting God. Later this year, I'm starting my PhD.
Wow.
I mentioned to you earlier. And even for that journey, I am still trusting on the grace of God. Because without grace, what can we really do?
Nothing much.
Yes. So that is my dependence is on the grace of God.
Wow, this is great. I am seated with an award winner. I'm seated beside an award winner of one of the most prestigious awards ever to exist on the face of the earth. And I'm so excited and humbled. I'm so glad that you have granted us this opportunity. In brief, just look at that camera. Yeah. Talk to someone, especially the youthful people who are struggling through that academic life. Yeah. And they need someone to encourage them to keep the faith, someone who is going through a lot of challenges of life.
Yeah.
Talk to them.
For me, first is to appreciate to be invited because there are so many people who have amazing stories, much more wonderful and colorful than mine. So just even to be given this opportunity by PrayerCave TV, I really appreciate that a lot. My advice to young people thinking about like their family journey or business journey or education journey is threefold. I think one is to always remember we have a God who cares. When I read a verse like says, like this verse that says, do not be lovers of money or be greedy about money because I will never leave you or I'll never forsake you. So just being conscious of God will really help. And then advice number 2 is seek wisdom. Whether this wisdom is through reading, whether it is through seeking advice, like today, even, before we came to this session, I had come from a meeting and I'd just gone for that meeting for the sole purpose of I needed some counseling on some decisions I want to take. Seek wisdom. The Bible says that wisdom is the supreme thing. So as much as you can do, seek wisdom. And then the third thing I always advise people is think more very consciously about your life decisions. I have one of my very good friends. His name is Anthony. We were together in campus, and today he's one of my best friends. He taught me something. I used to ask him for a lot of advice so many times, like peer advice. And every time I ask him for something, he always asks me, Ruben, what will matter 5 years from now? So when I ask him something, he asks me, Ruben, what will matter 5 years from now? And I always ask myself that when I'm about to do something, I always ask myself, what will matter 5 years from now? So always think about, the consequences of your decision. And every time you ask yourself, what will matter 5 years from now, you'll realize some things you're dealing with as a young person. Some are issues and some are non-issues. And that helps you to focus on the issues. So I'll say those three things. So, be, just that consciousness of God and His grace. Seek wisdom, because wisdom is the supreme thing in life. And number three, always give thought to the quality of your decisions.